unstoppable. We moving up, we on fire. Unstoppable, we never stop, we feel higher. Look at us, why we the best. Far better than all of the rest. Unstoppable, we moving up, we on fire. Never give up, never give in. Stronger we tough, thinking the skin. This is our game, so let it begin. This is our team, get ready to win. Ready to rumble, ready to play. Ready to tumble, we ain't afraid. Enemies hide, enemies pray. The squad is just run away.
It's Championship Sunday, and that could mean only one thing. It's time to find the active champions of new owners. Welcome to the final day of the FNCS Major 2 Grand Finals. Your favorite moment?
Probably the moment that we're gonna see that you just mentioned today when Shark and Teeny end up going from 5th to 1st.
Yeah, definitely gonna happen, right, Mini Miner?
Yeah, I hope so. I'm going to say my favorite moment, though, is Mr. Savage win, game number 1. Like, what a start to the weekend. Hopefully today is going to be just as exciting as well.
Yes, so let's take a look at the leaderboard and remind ourselves of what went on yesterday. We're going to talk about the top 5 jurors in the standings, starting with Sky and Scroll, because they are proving the doubters wrong right now, Takata. If anything, their ability to put on a united front has looked more consistent than ever before.
Yeah, this is the Sky and Scroll we're used to seeing. Absolute elite consistency. There was some haters, some doubters saying, oh, they switched up their drop spot from Boulevard. Their mid game isn't going to work as well. I don't know what's going to happen, but Sky and Scroll were actually leading the lobby with the most AR damage throughout the whole day. You can see almost 5,000 damage, and second place, Mini, is 3,000 damage. That's almost a 2,000 damage difference. What's also interesting is out of their 26 eliminations they got yesterday, 20 of them were during the end game.
Yeah, these guys really came alive here in the major finals. As you mentioned, they weren't looking that great actually coming up to the major finals. It wasn't quite clicking for them, but everything is coming together right at the very
I don't think going into yesterday's games that we expected Cringe and Twy to be quite this strong. We knew that they could play, but they had a difficult Osborne situation, and yet they're making it look so simple, and they're looking especially lethal in their endgames, Takata.
Hey, I love it. They're playing out of their minds. They made it top 5 4 out of the 6 games yesterday, and not only does Twy have the most eliminations out of anyone in the lobby from day 1, but they're also leading in shotgun damage, have the least storm damage out of anyone in the top 8, despite having kind of a difficult off-spawn situation to navigate, like you mentioned, Frankie. But Mini, they had a bit of a weird last match yesterday in Storm, right?
Yeah, that last game was really tough for them. They lost a lot of that damage early on, of course, with that net surge. You need to try and recoup some of that damage as well. They were sort of trying to go into loads of different areas to try and reclaim some of that. However, remember that 6th zone was just all the way, or the 6th game zone was all the way down towards the southwest, and it was really difficult for them to catch up. They ended up going down to the Storm in that game today, yesterday as well. So that's the big question for me now going into today, as you can see sort of what happened to their last game on the screen. That's the big question for me now, though. It's like, how are they going to respond? They haven't been in this situation before. Yesterday, I spoke about Twy not quite turning up when it comes to the grand finals to his ability. Now, how can they dust themselves off? How can they come back today after what ended yesterday in not great fashion?
But I think they're just going to try and remember the momentum that drove them in the first few games. Doing it for the UK, those boys. Let's bring back up the leaderboard, because in 3rd place are Harriet and Cami. And it's an FNCS Grand Finals. We're always going to be talking about...
Akari individually. He just absolutely popped off so many eliminations. And I think Takata, in general, the way that this duo played, they sort of played their roles perfectly well. The dynamic between them was really good.
Exactly, and we're actually going to see... in third place, so I'm excited to see if they can continue that trend today.
It's also worth noting that these guys haven't qualified for the Global Championships yet, so they have extra motivation to have a fantastic day too. But judging by the way they played yesterday, we're going to be seeing them in Antwerp. Hopefully, I'm not going to jinx anyone here. Now, looking at 5th on the leaderboard, it's Sheogorathbeqa, and yes, I know, we're disappointed.
They're 139 points behind the most consistent duo on EU, Sky and Scroll, in that first place spot right now.
Yeah, it wasn't a day to remember for these guys yesterday. They struggled in a lot of those early game fights. One of them was down in a couple of them as well. I think earlier on we saw Shark going down, then of course Teeny later on down the line in a few of the other games as well. So those off-spawn fights were just taking a little bit too long. They were setting themselves too far back. So in the two best games they actually had yesterday, they were sort of sat up in surge bases, and in those games they had the most amount of spy rifle damage, which shows they're sort of playing a little bit further back. But you mentioned it here, Takata. Last major, they had an incredible comeback on day 2. Third on the day in day 2, 308 points, over double what they got in day 1. 2 VRs, loads more eliminations, and much better placement. So these guys, based on last major's performance, could be the day 2 team to look out for. And remember, that last game from yesterday was a victory royale, so expecting big things from these guys today.
Well, let's continue to reflect on yesterday's games by getting into the zones with Taco and Levin.
Thank you very much, Frankie. Look, we have to talk about it. It's always going to be a big talking point. Who in day 1 just got a lot of zone luck, right? Whose performances are looking a bit Mickey right now? That's always going to be the question, Taco. Do you feel like anybody has benefited greatly from the zone tip?
Well, that's the... Clearly struggling to still find their footing, but that's what day 2 is all about. You've had the night to review, you've had the night to practice even a little bit more so now it's time to put practice into action.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, I'm definitely going to be looking at some of those, southern teams who maybe complained about the lack of zones and paying attention. If they do get the zones, whether or not they can match their level, that's always going to be what it's about. But enough from us. You can hear from us more later. We're going to send it back over to Frankie and the desk.
I can't wait to hear more from you guys. But also remember, if you're a pro, if you want to be a back-to-back champion, if you want to win a global championship, you got to be ready for anything. But are these duos going to be? Let's bring back up the leaderboard, because iDrop and Gonzo, it feels like in the first half of yesterday's games, Takata, they were crushing everyone's dreams in the end game. But then what happened by the end of the day?
Yeah, I mean, you look at their 4th place and you think, oh, that's great. The issue is they started the day with a 9th, 4th in their first matches, but they had a complete turn of events at the end of the day with a 44th, 27th, and 21st. I'm hoping they had some time to review their games, Minnie, because, they're going to have to fix some of those mistakes. But despite all this, iDrop still have the 2nd most eliminations in the lobby behind Twi. You can see they've been completely fragging out, and they are comfortably sitting in qualifying range for the Global Championships.
And you can see in a lot of their games right here, they're actually going down with so many builds. And this is something that I was looking at yesterday when I was sort of VOD reviewing them last night. And you could see all those builds, 123 builds on Gonzo right there when he went down, 102 here on iDrop. And you can see the zones in which they're actually going down in these endgames where things are maybe falling apart slightly for them. It's in the endgame. It's in those good positions. they should be a lot better today.
It'll be interesting to see if they can pick up a victory royale like our next duo did. The first victory royale of the day memorably went to Truly and Savage. But unfortunately, you can see they're 10th on the leaderboard right now. They're trying to qualify for the Global Championships, Takata. Are they in a good spot? What do they need to do?
It could be worse. With an electric start yesterday, winning game 1, I mean, social media was going crazy, saying, Grand's finished, we'll end it here. Savage won game 1. Unfortunately, Levin had to say something, and after that, they only made one top 10. But to be fair, when they did get top 10, Mini, it was a 4th place, and now it's kind of put them barely in qualifying range to the Global Championship.
Yeah, but that's exactly what these guys need to be doing. They need to be looking at that Global Championship qual as their goal, as their target for this weekend. I don't think they're going to be a team that's going to walk home with the axe of champions this weekend, but they can definitely get a positive result. Because if you look at their performances yesterday, yeah, they got that win, they got that 4th place, but the rest of the games were just a little bit mid and not great. So what it shows is because they're 10th on the leaderboard, all you need is 1 or 2 really solid games to put yourself in contention for qualifying to the Global Championships. So it kind of shows that the format here for these guys and the goal for today will not necessarily to be really uber consistent like some other teams we're talking about, just to have 1 or 2 of those big games that we know Mr. Savage can have.
We're going to be talking a lot about contention for the Global Championship today. So on page 2, you'll see we've got Velo and Zynox. We did have questions about whether they thrive in their first FNCS final. So what's the verdict so far, Takata?
That they are literally the cutoff, qualifying to the Global Championship at 14th place. And I know 9 duos qualify to the Global Championship this major, but there's 5 already qualified duos above them. So 14th place is that cutoff, Mini.
Yeah, and a lot of my talking points yesterday going into the day was that these guys, if they are going to get contested, might struggle because they're not necessarily used to landing at Latte. But they got con like 2 or 3 games yesterday and looked the real deal. They took out Winter and his teammate Osborne so many times. I think it was 2 or 3 times. Just really looking strong. So that doesn't seem to be the concern for them. The concern was all those teams rotating in via a third party.
To know if they can become diamonds. Are they going to thrive under the pressure, Takata?
I hope so. It was a bit of a back and forth yesterday, not knowing, are they going to be contested? Will they be on con? And the team that was originally going to fight them actually just landed on Thomas HD and Focus, but with Nebs and Nathan being in 16th, right outside the qualifying range, they're going to have to step it up today.
Yeah, it wasn't an amazing day for them. I was reviewing them last night as well, trying to look at exactly where things went wrong. And they did seem to have a few Storm Surge issues. They were rotating to different areas. They were trying lots of different things, rotating down to Sinister Strip, trying to fight down there, trying to base up next to their drop spot. And things weren't quite working. So I thought, let me just ask their coach. Let's just see what Harry had to say. So I sent him a message, and he basically was saying the same sort of thing. He was saying they were really struggling with Surge in their early games, which meant those later rotations in the 50-50 zones meant that they couldn't focus on those rotations. They had to focus on actually getting Surge. And Coach Harry, as Levin mentioned on the cast yesterday, likes his teams to think about the rotations at the forefront of their brain. So when their mind is elsewhere looking for Surge, they can't focus on those rotations. So what he said today was just making sure to get yourself in good opportunities to get early Storm Surge to then free up those rotations later on and hopefully not have to worry about it later on in the game.
And this game is about how you roll with the punches, how you deal with the random factors that are thrown your way, because it is entirely possible to be consistent no matter what in this game. And that's what we've seen from Sky and Scroll to Carter. Do you think... at the Global Championship and of course the Axe of Champions itself. Let's head over to Taco and Levin for game number 7.
Thank you very much, Frankie. Look, this is the time. There's no turning back now. We are on a one-way route to absolute cinema with what EU has shaping us for us right now, Taco.
And it's just ballistic to think that we're even in this position to begin with, because so much of, I think, expectations were just thrown out the window after yesterday's games. And I'm thinking it's more or less going to be a lot of the same here today, because these teams are ready to go, and so is Game 7.
But the reason why here in Game 6 things become even more layered is because we have the context of that first day, right, Taco? We know who was contested yesterday and now who isn't going to be contested today. Cringe and Twy have obviously had an amazing day one. They started off contested yesterday, and after just completely dominating Radion and Bimbo, are now looking to start day 2 off uncontested. I mean, it's a great thing, I guess you could argue, for Thomas and Focus. This is the team that was fighting Rick and Kuski all day yesterday. And more often than not, they won. I believe it was 5-0 on the day, and I think they left in one of the games, or they weren't there in one of the games. So Thomas and Focus were able to handle Rick and Kuski perfectly fine. Unfortunately for Cammy and Hari, they cannot say the same. It will have to be a Game 8 job for them. But maybe this change, Taco, is what Thomas and Focus need to be able to deliver a better day for all of their fans watching today.
We're not the only ones being thrown for a bit of a loop here. Some teams that are very familiarized with the fighting just continue to find themselves in these engagements. Lyrics and Maldiz will take down Pixovsky. Seren forced to retreat, but whether or not the disengage is going to be immediately successful, only time will tell, because it seems like they're on a bit of a hunt here now. Scroll, adamant as ever though. Faced up, Frosted Flats, very similar strategies. Don't expect much change here.
Yeah, these guys are going to be Mr. Consistent. That's what they've been.
Lev, knowing that they were in a triple contested position, just not really working in their favor, so not too surprised to see them trying to stake a claim elsewhere, but Darman Deemish shutting that down rather quickly here in Game 7. Still, other teams looking to really start building up a little bit of momentum here, and a lot of company surrounding Kenti, Bruzy, Photosai Sato, Jewel, Tidy, several different teams, but who's going to be the first to actually run into another Photosai and Sato? The Devious here camping out the Ascender. We'll see who's going to try and take it first, but surely teams maybe.
they did not have a great day one at all, and currently the start to game 7 is not looking comfy either. Sato running for his life. Fruzy and Kenty desperately trying to take it away from him and send him back to the lobby.
Good amount of teams all sorely missing points. Realistically, Fruzy and Kenty, they're definitely having to work for it a bit, though.
And I think the one thing you would say is obviously we know that Jewel and Tidy are here waiting in the wings, and they're the one team in this situation who actually is looking really good, right? Had a great day one, 7th place on the day, and looking to try and secure one of those Globals qualification spots. I mean, a good enough game here, maybe they are in a fighting chance for competing for the title, so need to be careful about how they approach this cleanup situation. Don't want to jump in it too willy-nilly, and Fruzy will walk right into the trap, exactly what they were looking for.
Sometimes it just helps to be uninvolved, because not only that, but even with Minority and Darkos now rolling up to what's just taken place, all that noise definitely bound to attract some third-party intervention, but Betty and Jewel, they weren't involved. They only got a cleanup stake, and so with that in mind, Minority and Darkos, they realized this opportunity maybe might have slipped away here. There's no real openings for us to get involved still. Other teams called it. Nathan Nebs, they were involved in some action, and part of it to do so with Cringe, and that is a big shakeup already, because now Twy left to try and sort through the pressure. I know. To make it through for that Globals later on this year. Shark and Teeny, though, again, at the very end of the day, we saw exactly what they could be capable of. The problem, though, is there is going to need to be some semblance of consistency involved here today, because we know that Sky, Scroll, Cringe Twy, they've got a bit of a head start after yesterday's competition. And for Sky and Scroll particularly, that's a duo that screams consistency.
I think the great thing that works in Shark and Teeny's favor is, even with how bad of a day it sort of felt for them, they're still just in 5th, right? It's not impossible. A bad game from Sky and Scroll. Unfortunately, this is the time where we have to remind people of the history of the eye drop. Of course, a player who has been around for so long in EU competitive, but a player who over the years we've seen him have great day one performances many a time. In fact, it was last year in trios when he was playing with Sky and Scroll, and they finished day one on first place and just couldn't quite materialize and hold on to that lead for the next day. He'll be hoping this time he can fight to get back into competition with Sky and Scroll. Dom and Dimash, I think at day one, that left a lot to be desired, Taco. But I think these guys are two of the best players when it comes to day two comebacks.
And they're already looking to remedy some of those. The builds that separate them from Hizix directly. Still being a bit cautious here though, because one well-played shot could be a tie turner here. But for Hizix, unfortunately, Darb and Dimash are more than willing to drag this one out. They're already sitting well above the surge threshold, but the elimination points for a piece, that's never anything to be overlooked. As now Dimash, Darb still waiting to see when they can connect with their final shots in. But Hizix, that delay, he might have done just enough, posed enough of a defensive measure to actually stand tall up against the likes of Darm and Dimash. It's a bit surprising seeing Solo hold their own against such a prevalent fighting Polish duo, but it does happen from time to time.
Yeah, and I think I should add the context of one of the major blockers for Darm and Dimash yesterday was being contested by Dandapuzu and Azat, and quite frankly a surprise contest, right? They weren't expecting to have to be fighting against those guys, and even though he came out on top, it did seem to ruffle their plan a bit. Swizzy and Pixie, this is the team I'm probably the most excited about outside of our top two right now, as far as day two expectations. I think they're definitely the type of team with the right setup who could fire their way into contention.
If Summit is anything to base it off of, those highlights that we did see from Swizzy and Pixie in that circumstance, they're definitely not done or anywhere close to it here in day two.
Pixowski and Seren find themselves in a world of hurt, down on Surge. They found a team to potentially deal some damage too, but instantly lose the trade, and Seren will go down. They're even further down on Surge. No, he's exposed, and oh, that's just the worst scenario. He gets knocked, and he tries to hide from the duo that knock him, but then he gets shot in the back, and so he just bleeds even more Surge damage and just puts Pixowski in an even worse position.
And the real struggle starts to unfold here for Pixowski, because what once seemed like potential to maybe try and look for another reboot opportunity is now just being stifled entirely. Pix and Fire and just continuing to sort of echo Pixowski, and yeah, that won't take much time for them to clean it up.
And that really hurts, because this is a team that came into the competition in 9th, right? This is a team that's fighting for a global spot. A rough start to the day might just throw a spanner into the works for their global's hopes.
Now they'll just have to look and hope that potentially some of these other leaderboard teams that were ahead of them or just around their position also encounter a similar fate. But for Twy and Cringe, they've done a decent job at managing to put themselves into a position that could potentially draw them to have a little bit more surge here. They're going to need it only 73 above currently, and they know that ever since that early hiccup in Game 7, they've got to find some form of on those rotates. Bits of sprays, but not netting anything huge just yet, but still enough to keep them over where they need to be.
Yeah, they might just spot Izzy out here. Well, not Izzy, Nosif, sorry, is the player close to them. Izzy and Nosif currently split up, and Nosif is sat very close to their boxes. I don't know if they realize he is solo. Yeah, their attention being focused elsewhere right now, and rightfully so. These guys are just desperate for their damage. They can't afford to wait around too long. They have to look for the right opportunity, and opportunities will be present. Truly up on elevation, spots all the players out, overdriving into the zone, and he'll be able to map their rotations and follow appropriately.
It's a great rotate right now out of Truly and Savage, and they've done an excellent job at just maintaining that same level of elevation despite Zone pulling a bit over the hillside. But Twy and Cringe, they needed something. They're gonna find it onto Venus. That's a nice little refresh, some extra loot to kind of secure this next move. But on the opposite side of where all this congestion was taking place, that drone pan over shot, Sharktini, Sky Scroll, very close to one another and having the advantages of just being in that dead side position. So they're not going to get caught in the same level of traffic as some of these other teams. Granted, they might try and apply some pressure towards the other, but with Sharktini being the first. Any sort of surge struggles.
Sky and Scroll always going to be the team you expect to see in favorable positions. Like you highlight, in this situation, there is a very good team just ahead of them in their path to zone. I think they'll still be more than alright to get into zone safely. Can't say the same for everybody else though. iDrop and Gonzo trying to run their way on in. And it's going to be a choice of just the white line for Gonzo. Has to pause and take a break as he takes a bit of damage. Oh goodness, we're just seeing how difficult this rotation is for certain players in this lobby. Cringe and Twy holding on by a thread.
That early hindrance just coming back to haunt them. Even with that last refresh we saw on the replay reel, it's still just not enough. Sitting 71 below, neither of them has any form of shield to try and recover even further still, and the builds just so detrimental here. When you start busting out the wood, everyone knows that you are incredibly weak, and unfortunately the lobby focus just continues to be centralized around them. Pixie's gonna get credit for Twy on one, but Shark, Pixie, so many teams just looking directly at Cringe and Twy were last spotted. And there's just no time left in this lobby. Cringe and Twy will have to...
Doesn't matter how dominant you were in day one. Day two is a fresh slate. And if you want control in this lobby, you have to earn it. Cringe and Volko, they want to control the skies in this game. And there will be opportunities, but there will be plenty of teams in this lobby desperate to make high plays to try and mount comebacks, and they have to fend them all off.
But like one of the criticisms from our analysts, iDrop, Gonzo, they put themselves in great positions. They've got solid build counts to try and maintain it, but with 6 eliminations already, this is where they could really start to play catch up if they're able to continue controlling this mid-tier layer. Whether or not they want to actually try and challenge for height, they'll have to wait and see. But Sky Scroll already doing what they do best, controlling the flow of traffic in that backside of zone. Doing a great job at just applying so much pressure, and that's going to allow them to continue their wraparound towards the front side, and it'll be very difficult for other teams to really cut across their position. Savage and Truly being one of them, but they're just getting pressure from every single angle. Truly going to get a big response here onto Swizzy, but he can't make it to the body. Savage goes down, and Truly, even with the full elimination credit, just not close enough. Another team taken out, but Cringe, Volko having a time about it from way overhead. No one seemingly challenging them just yet, but Sharktini, they might have taken notice. They're willing to go up. It's time to invest as Pixie now fighting for his life on the ultimate low.
Yeah, unfortunately for Sharktini, they're just running low on materials. A refresh might just be enough to convince him to reconsider for height. Pixie, though, as a solo, is going to have to try and fend off. The zone will start to pull back and cringe and... And Cringe and Volko can't believe their luck right now. The pullback makes life on height just that bit easier for a moment.
But we're talking about Cringe and Volko and the benefits for them. It's the same case scenario for Sky and Scroll. So much of that low ground was in their piece control. And they are doing an excellent job at just sticking towards this front side, committed to the cause, refusing to allow anybody to really try and navigate any further towards that front side control. But Shark, Teeny, they have run out of materials entirely. They've got to try and find some form of refresh. They've done a great job, at least, of avoiding a lot of that height focus.
And this is a scary situation for anyone in the lobby when Shark and Teeny go on alert.
Beamish Darm, though, they're not the only ones. Shark and Teeny, they've been caught out. It's actually going to be Velo. He was sitting inside the storm for a while, playing out his heals, but the damage has been done. Same pressure being applied, though, to iDrop and Gonzo. So many of these duos that had looked relatively healthy now finding themselves in circumstances where they've got to just see how many points, how many placements they can actually clutch out as an individual. And Teeny trying to gauge if he's going to run into Sky and Scroll because he knows they've got to be down here with him.
Yeah, and everybody that we pan to seems to be struggling in the material department. You look at Sky's inventory, and he is chilling. He's looking good. And that might just be the keys to their victory here in this game. Teeny, his kite grief instincts kick in, and they won't even cost him as well. He takes Godoy down, but unfortunately, he will fall himself. And so now an opportunity for Sky and Scroll to take real control of this game as iDrop might just fall straight into their palms. And they're looking for that final closeout. Volko will fall. Sky will get the refresh. They will look to go up and try and close out this game.
iDrop doing everything in his power, but at the same time, we're facing the inevitable here. It's Sky and Scroll perfectly healthy. iDrop doing what he can to avoid their line of sight, but the builds are running out. Time is also running out. Sky and Scroll have managed to secure that elimination, but the last one to be found, Polo, nowhere left to hide at the end of it all. Still, well played to Sky and Scroll as they get their third victory royale in this Grand's competition, Legend.
Was it ever a doubt? The best team on day one start the day with a win, and no better win than that.
I can't even put it into better words than Levin. I mean, it was textbook Sky and Scroll, Takata.
They have just set the tone for how this Major 2 Grand Finals is going to play out, okay? The consistency was back. They finished day one in first. They start day two with a win mini. It cannot get much better than that.
Wow, I mean, yeah. The question was going to be, could they continue it, right, in day two? Realistically, it wasn't that big of a question because everyone knows what these guys are about. And the answer is very much convincing yes. These guys are just unreal. The way they played that low ground was absolutely perfect. You saw it. They invested so many of their materials, and they're actually quite low on materials when that zone actually pulled back. So that helped them out. Not that they couldn't get the refresh in the end, but because they invested all of those materials earlier on in that end game, they had so much of that piece control, which allowed them to pick up so many refreshes later on as well. And it's just an absolute joy to watch these guys operate on these low ground layers. This is what I was talking about. They had so much of this piece control, so many of these builds were actually theirs that they could just dictate how the low ground was actually played and sort of manipulate the rest of the lobby down below. Nice little elimination calls on the Cringe there, who again wow, yeah, I was actually looking at last major as well. After they won 378 points, I think it was. This major 376. There's only a 2-point difference. Whereas I was looking, major 1 day 2, their first game was a 7th. This game 1 in Major 2 is a first, so it's like they're almost better than last Major, which they dominated as well, so could we be in for the same scar?
Clinical, their precision is everything they do. I'm excited to see them continue out today.
Well, there were some duos that got into trouble in the mid-game, and there are some other duos that looked threatening. So let's talk about them after the break.